Beware the Fish by Korman, an uncommon cure. Good morning, all. The fish launches Operation Pop Can. Beware the fish. Sergeant Featherstone noted with some excitement that Wednesday morning's announcement also came at 8:45. When the fish disappeared, he switched off the television set, his mind reeling with ideas and suspicions. He turned on his tape recorder. Investigation Fish! Field Report Number 2, Sergeant Harold P. Featherstone, Special Division reporting, he dictated. A pattern is beginning to emerge. There have been fish broadcasts reported at all hours of the day, but 8:45 a.m. seems to be standard. It is my suspicion that the fish is a code name for the leader of a terrorist cell, which is using public communications to send messages possibly in code. This morning, Operation Popcan was announced. This could be a major maneuver planned by the fish and his associates. I will have to be extremely alert and watchful. Featherstone out. He switched off the recorder and, responding to a rumble in his stomach, left the room in search of breakfast. The door of the next room opened slightly, and two eyes watched intently as Featherstone walked through the parking lot to the street and across to the diner. Then the tall, thin man in room 14 also left the motel and casually headed for the little restaurant. "And that's the way I expect you to complete the obstacle course," said Coach Flynn, jumping off the climbing apparatus in the gymnasium. "Any questions?" He sneezed violently. Bruno elbowed Boots in the ribs. Boots raised his hand. "Sir, I have a question about the vaulting horse in the far corner. Isn't there too much space between it and the springboard? Could we take a closer look?" Flynn took Boots and the rest of the class over to the far corner of the gym. Bruno stole away from the group and moved swiftly to the bench where Coach Flynn kept his glass of Muscle Aid, a high-energy drink. From the pocket of his shorts, he took out the eyedropper bottle of cold remedy that Elmer had given him. Holding the dropper over the coach's glass, he administered exactly 6 drops as per instruction. Then he strolled back and merged with the group. Boots' problem had apparently been cleaned up. The coach again sneezed violently. "Oh, this cold," he groaned. "I've got a butte." "Maybe the Muscle Aid will help," suggested Bruno hopefully. "People with colds should drink a lot." "Good idea," agreed Flynn. He jogged over to the bench, picked up the glass, and drained it. Boots shut his eyes. A strange look came over Flynn's face. "Funny?" he said. "It never tasted like that before." He hiccuped, took 3 faltering steps, and collapsed to the floor, where he began to snore loudly. Boots opened his eyes and took in the scene with a gasp of horror. "Bruno, we've killed him!" "He isn't dead," declared Bruno. "He's just asleep. Funny, Elmer didn't mention that he was going to fall asleep." "What happened?" cried Pete Anderson. "I'd better go get the fish." No fish," shouted Bruno. "No fish." "Fish," murmured Flynn. A goofy grin spread over his face, and he began to giggle softly, still asleep. "What do we do?" asked Rob Adams nervously. "We'd better take him home to bed," Bruno decided. "How are we going to get him all the way to dormitory 2 without anybody noticing?" demanded Boots, slightly hysterical. "If we all crowd around him," explained Bruno, "we can walk him all the way." He looked at the rest of the class. "You guys with us?" "Gee, I don't know," said Chris Talbot uncertainly. "Well," said Bruno, "if we don't get him out of here, you guys will share the blame when the fish catches us." "I'm not sure, but I think that's blackmail," commented someone. "Gee, I didn't even do anything and I'm in trouble." "What did you do to him? Was it poison?" "Poisoned guys don't snore, stupid. They die. Let's get him out of here." Bruno and Boots hoisted their coach to his feet, supporting him under each arm. All the boys crowded around and in a body walked him across the campus to dormitory 2. Flynn sang The Maple Leaf Forever all the way. "My, he's patriotic," chuckled Bruno as they crowded down the hall to room 200. "Yes, and he's also heavy," panted Boots. "Open the door." Bruno plucked the key from Flynn's jacket pocket and unlocked the door. "In days of yore," sang Flynn, as the rest of the boys beat hasty retreat, leaving Bruno and Boots to tend to their coach. They dragged him across the room and dropped him on the bed. "Paper," ordered Bruno. "Get paper." "We don't need paper. We need an ambulance," said Boots frantically. "It's almost lunchtime," insisted Bruno. "Elmer will explain everything. Meanwhile, we've got to put a sign on the gym door saying that afternoon classes are canceled because the coach has a bad cold. See to it." "But Bruno, what if..." It's a beautiful day. Oh, it's a beautiful day, shouted Flynn, throwing his arms and legs in the air. He's not sick, insisted Bruno. You can see that. I don't know what he is, but he isn't sick. Let's make that sign and go meet Elmer in the dining room. Hey, you guys, mumbled Flynn. Don't go. The party's just getting started. Boots shot Bruno a worried look as they left the room. After a short detour to place the sign explaining Flynn's absence on the gymnasium door, Bruno and Boots caught up with Elmer Drimsdale at the entrance to the dining hall. Elmer, we have to talk to you, said Bruno. Elmer gazed at him questioningly. Your stupid cold cure, cried Boots. It poisoned the coach. Impossible, said Elmer. There's no toxic material in my formula. Then why did he pass out? Cried Boots. Elmer cocked his head. He shouldn't have. Perhaps it's all psychological. Did you explain to him that it's completely harmless? Not exactly, replied Bruno. We slipped it into his muscle aid. Oh, dear, said Elmer. That's the reason. Muscle aid has citric acid. My formula should not be taken with citric acid. What happens? Gasped Boots. There's a reaction, explained Elmer, rather similar to the ingestion of large quantities of alcoholic beverages. Elmer, speak English, Bruno snapped. Mr. Flynn is drunk, translated Elmer. Bruno and Boots sat down on the ground and laughed, mostly with relief. Perhaps we had better attend to him, suggested Elmer. This will, of course, wear off in a few hours, but it would never do if someone saw him in this condition. After all, it is your fault. Our fault, objected Bruno as they began hurrying to dormitory 2. It was your concoction that got him bombed. It was administered incorrectly, accused Elmer primly. They entered the dormitory and ran down the hall. The door of room 200 was open. Flynn was gone. Oh, no, moaned Boots, leaning against the wall for support. Oh, no, repeated Bruno. If we don't find him before the fish sees him, we'll have to confess. Oh, no, echoed Elmer. Where could he have gone? If you were a drunk gym teacher, where would you go? Demanded Bruno. I would stay home where I wouldn't worry my students, muttered Boots feelingly. We have to get him back to his room, Bruno said. Elmer, check the gym. Boots, you look in his office in the faculty building. I'll take the staff dining room. Come on, let's move. The 3 boys ran out of dormitory 2 and were about to go off on their separate errands when across the road, Miss Scrimmage's outdoor public address system sprang to life. Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, sang a male voice loudly and rather off-key. Flynn! Chorused Bruno, Boots, horrified. As Flynn finished his song, a voice they recognized as Kathy Burton's howled, One more time! Obediently, Flynn began again. Finally, Kathy's voice returned. Attention out there! You tell him, cheered Flynn. We have a stray here, Kathy continued. He's tall, red-haired, and answers to the name of Al. Would someone please come to claim him immediately? As Bruno and Boots rushed toward scrimmages, a nervous Elmer Drimsdale, stumbling along behind them, could see a group of girls escorting their coach down the driveway to the side of the road. The boys ran up to them. Is Miss Scrimmage around? Boots asked anxiously. Did she see him? Yes and no, offered Kathy. When he walked into her sitting room and asked her to dance, she fainted. She turned to Flynn. Okay, Al, it's time for you to go home now. Don't want to go, Flynn said sulkily. I like it here. Come again any time, Al, said Kathy genially. Bye. Bruno and Boots and Elmer hustled Flynn across the road and across the campus to dormitory 2. Luckily, they attracted very little attention from the student body and were not seen by any member of the staff. Please, Coach, begged Boots as they placed Flynn on his bed. Please have a nap. I know. Let's play cards, Flynn suggested brightly. We can't, sir, said Elmer. We have classes this afternoon. Then why are you wasting my time? Cried Flynn, starting for the door. I'm going back to that scrimmage place. Ask the lady to dance. Cards it is, said Bruno quickly. Good. Didn't like her anyway. Flynn rummaged through a drawer for a deck of cards. Bruno noticed Elmer quietly sneaking out the door. Drimsdale, get back here. You're in this too, red-faced. Elmer slithered back in. And just to make it interesting, said Flynn, we'll play for toothpicks. They all sat down on the floor and began to play poker. In half an hour, Flynn was fast asleep, and Elmer had won all the toothpicks. Beginner's luck, mumbled Bruno. They tiptoed out, careful not to waken their sleeping coach. Miss Sturgeon, or Miss Scrimmage, Mr. Sturgeon snapped into his office telephone. You have made up stories before, but this one is beyond anything. No member of my staff was over at your school running about in his underwear. They were all in class except my athletic director, who spent the afternoon in bed with a bad cold. Yes, I am sure. As a matter of fact, I am positive. My staff does not drink during school hours, and none of them ever drinks to excess. Miss Scrimmage, it simply cannot have happened. No, I was not watching Mr. Flynn 100% of the time. Mr. Flynn is an athlete. He does not smoke or drink. He won't even eat fried foods. Miss Scrimmage! Miss Scrimmage! The headmaster buzzed his secretary. Mrs. Davis, I'll be out for a few moments. He left the faculty building and walked to dormitory 2, going straight to room 200 and tapping at the door. There was no answer. From inside, he could hear loud snoring. He shook his head. That woman, he said aloud. He strode back to the office. Investigation Field Report Number 3. Sergeant Harold P. Featherstone, Special Division reporting, dictated Sergeant Featherstone into his tape recorder. He was locked in the motel bathroom and had the shower, sink, and fan all running. A further development has arisen, he continued softly. I am being followed by a tall, thin, dark-haired man with a long nose. He is staying in the room next to mine. Everywhere I go, he goes. I am reporting from my bathroom with the water running to render any bugging devices ineffective. I suspect he is one of the fish's operatives, or perhaps the fish himself. Whichever, it is obvious that the fish knows of my presence here in Chutney. I will take all necessary precautionary measures. Featherstone, out. And that's the end of that chapter.